Well, good morning again, WCC. Glad to have you all here, braving this single-digit weather. Winter has not forgotten us. Aren't we thrilled with that? Amen. We're going to talk about all the blessings that we're grateful for today, and that may be one of them by the time I'm done with you, I hope. Some of you might have wondered, after Todd and I spoke a couple weeks ago about the shift that we're making as a church to become a disciple-making church, where we want to help you become disciples so that you can go out and reproduce yourselves as disciples. And talking about that and then kind of shifting this grace and truth value of ours to truth. We're going to die on the hill of truth, but not at the expense of grace. And then launching into a series on the grace of giving seemed to be a little confusing maybe to you. And maybe the question would be a valid question. Well, why would we talk about discipleship? And then why would we talk about this topic? I think this topic has everything to do with discipleship, and here's why. It's not about the money. It's not specifically about giving. It's about anything in our lives that we have not settled the lordship issue over. The issue that we must all settle, whether it's in the area of finances, whether it's in the area of relationships, whether it's in the area of whatever it is, our children or our marriages, whatever it is, if we have anything in our lives that takes priority over our relationship with Jesus Christ, we have to deal with that and we have to settle that issue because we have got to settle. It's really a lordship issue. Who's the Lord of my life? And it wasn't until I settled that and was willing, and again, we tend to play tug of war with God sometimes. We go back and forth with Him. But is there an area of your life that you've not given fully, that you've not fully surrendered to God, that you've not laid at the foot of the cross? If you think of your life and you sitting on the throne of your life, are you sitting on the throne of your life or is Jesus on the throne of your life? You see, for the first 21 or 22 years of my life, I was sitting on the throne. I was in charge. And it wasn't until I decided that I needed to put Him in charge and surrender everything to Him that my life really began to change. And I think as I read what Jesus talks about when it comes to money, that seems to be as much of an issue for us as any other issue, and I would suggest it is in our culture today. And that's why we're talking about it. So today I want to remind you of what we were challenged with last week. The Apostle Paul writes a couple of letters to a group of Christians in Corinth. And he's encouraging them. He says, you guys excel in so many things, and I want to challenge you. There's this group of Christians in Macedonia that have taken up this offering, and they're excelling in generosity, and I don't want you guys to miss out on the blessings that they're experiencing. And here's how that text goes in 2 Corinthians. And now, brothers and sisters, we want you to know about the grace that God has given the Macedonian churches. In the midst of a very severe trial, their overflowing joy and their extreme poverty welled up in rich generosity. For I testify that they gave as much as they were able and even beyond their ability. Entirely on their own, they urgently pleaded with us for the privilege of sharing in this service to the Lord's people. And they exceeded our expectations. They gave themselves first of all to the Lord and then by the will of God also to us. So we urged Titus, he was the leader, he was like the campus pastor of that church, just as he had earlier made a beginning, to bring also to completion this act of grace on your part. But since you, and he's talking to the Corinthian Christians here, he goes, since you guys excel in everything, you excel in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in the love we have kindled in you. See that you also excel in this grace or gift of giving. And the focus today, the key word today is going to be on grace. You see, generosity best flows out of a proper or correct understanding of God's grace. I think a life well lived can only be lived well as a follower of Christ in view of God's grace, in light of God's grace, when we constantly understand that everything we do flows out of what He has first done for us. In Romans chapter 12, we talk about this, and Paul uses the term in view of God's mercy in Romans 12, verse 1, and I read this last week. I'm going to read it again. There, he says, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy. And what he's saying here is always before you, in everything you do, I want you to view God's mercy. I want you to have God's grace. I want you to look at what Jesus has done, the completed work of what He has done on the cross, and I want you to live your life in the shadow of that. So in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God, because this is your true and proper worship. You see, when our eyes are fixed on God's grace and mercy, our lives become a continual offering of grace, mercy, and generosity. It's not like we have to really think about it. It's not like we have to really force ourselves to do it. It's like, in view of God's mercy, in view of what he has done for me, how can I not do it? It's not like I have to do it. It's like, how can I not do it? And you see, once we understand that, once we live our lives in view of God's mercy, we're no longer under the bondage of demands. You think about it, the world is full of demands. Your parents had demands on you. Your teachers, your coaches had demands on you. Your employer has demands on you. The government has demands on us. There's nothing wrong with things being demanded of us. But so many of us confuse all of those authorities in our lives with God. God does not demand of us. You see, when Jesus died on the cross, all of the demands that God has for us to have a right relationship with him were met in Christ. And so we no longer live under the demands of life. We live to meet needs versus demands. That's why this is a freedom that the Apostle Paul talks about when he addresses the church in Galatia. In Galatians 5:1, he says, "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." Let me ask you this. Many of you started out in freedom. You experienced this amazing freedom when you gave your life to Christ, when you surrendered to him. But maybe you have allowed some things to creep back into your life that have put you in bondage. Even as Christ followers, this happens all of the time. You see, on the cross, Jesus met every one of God's demands to make our relationship with him right, to give us true freedom. And here's the way we ought to live our lives in view of God's mercy. Now we get to, instead of have to, live generously as living offerings to God. Do you see the difference? When you're asked to serve, when you have the opportunity to serve or to give or to do something sacrificially, it's no longer, well, I have to do that, I'm a Christian. I have to do that so that I can appease God. I have to live in such a way. No. It's now, I get to do this because he did this for me. You see the difference? In view of God's mercy, we get to live for others. We get to be generous. We get to serve. We get to sacrifice. You see, in view of God's mercy, we have basically given up all of our rights and we get to live fully for him. But what are the areas in your life that are keeping you from that freedom? You see, now we get to instead of have to. I'm going to shift a little bit and I'm going to use some terminology, a term that you're very, very familiar with. Even as Christians, have you heard of the lottery? I know none of you have played it because you're Christians and we don't gamble, we don't dance, we don't play cards, we don't, none of that stuff. People are like, so have you ever played the lottery? I haven't. I'll be honest with you, I haven't. Not because I think I'm above that. I'm afraid I might win. And that would really screw my life up as a pastor. How would you view me if I won? Okay, did you hear recently about the guy? I'm trying to think, he might have been from Wisconsin. He was a young guy, and I was trying not to be resentful of the guy because he said, well, I've really tried to live my life well up to this point, like all 21 years of my life. I've sacrificed, and I feel like I've gotten $1.5 billion that I've deserved. $1.5 billion just by buying a ticket. Now, again, the payout after taxes was a paltry $491 million, which I hope he can live on the rest of his life. But this is an interesting thing that happens to people when they win the lottery. It is estimated that over half of the lottery winners, the big mega lottery winners, are bankrupt within 5 years. You see, the lottery doesn't really change us. It simply amplifies who we already are, doesn't it? So I want to have a little group interaction here right now. I want you to look at the person next. I'm going to ask you the question, what would you do, what would be the first thing you would buy if you won the lottery today? I want you to turn to the person next to you or around you and let's talk about that. What would you buy? Go ahead. You can do that. It's safe. You're in a safe place. What would you buy? If you won the lottery, I mean a big lottery. Like a $491 million payout. What would you do with that money? What would you buy? Okay. Before I lose you, what would you do? You know, Cookie and I talk about that. We've talked about that before. What would we do if we won like the payout, like netted $400 million? You know, I think well, I won't tell you what all we'd do with it, but we'd buy some stuff, I'm sure, pay some stuff off. And then I would stand up here and say, well, we'd start a foundation of some sort, you know, and wouldn't it be a blast, like, to give money away? I'm a sucker for shows that, like, give people stuff and surprise them, like, you know, make the home makeover shows and all that kind of stuff, or The Boss, The Undercover Boss, those shows. I mean, I tear up every time I watch those stupid shows because I'm just such a sucker for seeing people blessed with generosity from other people and unexpectedly. But I bring this up because the story I want to teach you today is one that Jesus taught, and it's really about living in view of God's mercy versus living with an attitude of entitlement as it comes to our money or our relationships or just our lives in general. And the title in my Bible of this story is The Parable of the Rich Fool. Now, a parable is a story about something. It is more often not a true story, not something that really happened, but it's a story that Jesus tells about something. It's a parable, like it's a story of, to prove a point or to get an example across. And so Jesus is preaching to a huge crowd. I want you to keep the lottery thing in mind, okay? I'm going to circle back to it in a minute. But Jesus is teaching, it says, to thousands of people. So this is his megachurch moment. And this bizarre thing happens in the middle of this talk that he is giving. This guy just kind of totally interrupts him. Now, can you imagine, like, if I'm standing up here on a Sunday morning, if you're standing up, and all of a sudden somebody just, in some completely random way that has nothing to do with what you're talking about, just stands up and asks you a question or just interrupts you in the middle of the talk. And this is what this guy does. And so Jesus launches into this story about this young man who clearly is pretty narcissistic and has a huge attitude of entitlement. And the story is found in the Gospel of Luke in chapter 12, beginning with verse 13. And here's how it goes. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher." I mean, Jesus is like just talking to this. It's not like he's like sitting around talking to like three guys. He's talking to like thousands of people, the text says. And out of the blue, someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, what the heck are you doing? Can't you see I'm talking?" No, he didn't do that. He goes, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you and your brother?" Then he said to them, "Watch out. Be on your guard." He thought, this is a great opportunity to talk to this self-centered kind of attitude of entitlement, obviously fairly well-to-do in that culture, young man who's all about getting what is his. Because in that day, when the father died, the oldest son got the inheritance. He was in charge of stuff to divvy it up between his siblings. And so clearly this guy was the younger brother. And he says to this guy and to the crowd, he says, "Well, I might as well take this opportunity to talk about something that's a huge issue for us. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." This is a story of something about something, and it's a warning about materialism and greed. You see, Jesus immediately in this young man sees an attitude of entitlement, and he goes on then to address it right away. And I think he could be speaking to so many of us in our culture today that live with an attitude of entitlement. I mean, maybe right now, think about something that you're a little bit resentful about, like, well, I was entitled to that raise, or I was entitled to that promotion, or my kid should have been entitled to that award, or I got screwed over when I was. I'm entitled to. Are we really? Who told us that we were entitled to anything? I mean, the very odds that you even exist are astronomical. The fact that the one sperm cell out of the millions, actually yours reached the egg first. You shouldn't even be here, let alone deserve anything, and it's true for me. And yet so much of that is what wrecks us, isn't it? Spiritually and emotionally and relationally. Well, I'm entitled to that, and I'm bitter when I don't get it. And that's exactly what was going on here. So Jesus addresses this beginning in verse 16. And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. So he's saying this guy, I'm talking about a wealthy person. And what I did is I had all the times he references I in highlights. He thought to himself, this rich man who like hit the jackpot, whose crops were big yield, kind of won the lottery, hard work, I know, nothing wrong with hard work, okay? I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm saying. He thought to himself, what shall I do? You see, I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. Like it's all his doing. I mean, he caused it to rain. He caused the ground to be fertile. It's all him. It's his doing, right? I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain, and I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain. I think Jesus is almost mocking this guy, because whenever people talk about themselves in the first person, you think, oh, wow, they got a bit of an issue. If I started going, well, Denny thinks that you should all listen to him when he speaks. That would be weird, wouldn't it? You'd think Denny has lost his mind, or he is full of himself. And so Jesus said, he's talking about this guy, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years, so live the American dream. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. Isn't that the goal? And you see, this is what begins to happen to us, but when we don't settle this lordship issue. Hey, tell my brother to give me my inheritance. I've earned it. I'm entitled to it. We have got to solve that issue, you guys, as followers of Jesus, or it will continually get in our way. And I don't know what that issue or that idol is for you. It may not be money, but it's something. And he's talking, he's talking about this attitude of entitlement. It's a rich people problem, isn't it, that he's addressing? And I would say that if you live in America, your problems are rich people problems, more than likely. I think about it this way. I have 2 cars. And actually I have a house for my cars to live in. It's called a garage. That doesn't seem like a big deal to us, does it? Do you realize that like 93% of the world doesn't even have 1 car, let alone 2, let alone a house to put their cars to sleep in at night? Yeah, but I wish I had better cars. And I wish I had a heated garage with a really cool workplace. There's nothing, don't hear me wrong. There's nothing wrong with stuff. I just want to put it in perspective. You ever had this experience with your kids when your kids were little, and you got like a whole room dedicated to toys and video games, and they're walking around on a Saturday. What's wrong, buddy? There's nothing to do. There's just nothing to do. And you grab their little hand, you walk them into their playroom, and you go, well, there's that, and 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 if you don't like that, and that, and that, then go outside and go to them, and those, and that, there's nothing to do. Or like I used to, much to the irritation of my wife, open the refrigerator, 10 o'clock at night when I shouldn't be eating anyway. There's nothing to eat. There's nothing in here. Well, there's a whole bunch of leftovers in containers. You realize how foreign of a concept it is for 90% of the world, this idea of leftovers? A leftover, and we're like, there's vegetables and there's fruit. Or how about the walk-in closet in the master bedroom? You're getting ready to go out. Guys, you know what I'm talking about. You hear this, what's wrong, dear? Nothing to wear. What about that pair of shoes and that pair of shoes and those other 12 pair of shoes and those 18 outfits and that 5, that do not do that. But you can relate. There's this uncomfortable laughter in here, right? Rich people problems. But we are entitled to this. I have worked hard. I have earned this. Me. You see, what Jesus is trying to teach us, what Paul is trying to encourage us with is this: joy comes when we constantly look at God's lottery in our lives and when we quit looking for easy. I want to circle back to verse 19 again. I mean, look what this guy says. He goes, this is kind of the end goal. When I build bigger barns to carry all the stuff that I have earned, not that he didn't work hard for it, but that's not Jesus' point. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. Now, there are days. That sounds awesome, doesn't it? It's like, I have days. You know what my fantasy day, like eat, drink, and be merry is? Just to drop out, move to Colorado, move to a ski resort, and just open up a t-shirt shop. Sell stupid t-shirts. And then go skiing, be a ski bum. That would be awesome for like a day. And then I'd be going, what? Because think about, I don't know about you, the books that I like to read, I'm not a big novel reader and all that kind of stuff, fictional stuff. I love to read biographies about people who just did amazing things. And you know what's absent in all their stories? Easy. Why do we love these stories? Because it was so hard. They fought. They scraped. They were determined. And they finally succeeded. If there's a book about some guy that invented something and made $1 billion and sold it, and at 25 he's living on a beach somewhere, it's I'm not going to read his biography. Why would I care about that? I think something in us, we're designed to exist for the sake of others. Easy should not be our goal. Meaning should be our goal. And this is why we got to settle these issues of entitlement and greed and materialism. This is what Jesus is trying to teach us, because here's the deal. All of the stuff in the world will not make you happy if your soul is not healthy. Let me say that again. All the stuff in the world is not going to make you happy if your soul is not healthy. Because no matter what you get, you're just going to become, I think the more we get, the more it amplifies who we really are. And I think this is what Jesus is dealing with. And then Jesus begins to land this story, the end of this parable. He says, so here's what I want to tell you. This is the moral of the story, people. Young man, since you interrupted me, you asked for it. I'm going to tell you what the key is. Here is the moral to the story. Become rich toward God. Look at what Jesus says next and how he concludes this section of his sermon. But God said to him, you fool. He's talking to this man, this rich this guy who's made all this money and building bigger barns and referring to himself in the first person. He says, but God said to him, you fool. And this is really what he's saying. You're not going to live forever. You're going to die someday. It may not be this night, but you're going to die someday. You fool. This very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? He's saying you cannot take it with you, so why are you wrecking your relationships? Why are you stressing yourself out, trying to gain all this stuff that you can't take with you anyway? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves but is not rich toward God. So how can we be rich toward God? What does it mean to be rich toward God? That's kind of an interesting term, isn't it? Well, here's how you can be rich toward God. Jesus talks about it in another gospel, the Gospel of Matthew. In chapter 25, if you want to be rich toward God, if you want to move beyond your attitude of entitlement, if you really want to deal with the lordship issue in your life, here's how it works. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you? Or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. You see, the world desperately needs Jesus. But remember, after his ascension, he went to heaven, took his rightful place with God, and sent back to us his Spirit so that we could be his earthly body. That's why we're called as the church, the body of Christ. We're his hands and feet. But if we're too busy storing up stuff for ourselves, if we're too busy living for me and I and us, we're not going to have time for others. You see, freedom comes from generosity. And again, I want to be very clear here. Possessions in their proper place are fine. But what place do they have in our lives? Have we settled the lordship issue in this area? Have we settled the lordship area, issue, period? The key is to share them in view of God's mercy as a result of his grace. So I have a homework assignment for you this week. If you're new here, you're like, really? You guys give homework here? If you're a teacher, you're like, yes. By the way, how about a round of applause for all of our teachers here? You guys I was thinking about that. We need to pray for you more often. Man, you talk about you being on the front line. Anyway, it's a story for another day, but thank you for what you do. So I want to be like a teacher. I want to give you homework. So here's what I'd like you to do this week. I want you to really think through this. What lottery have you won in life? Not like, hey, I won the $100 once at the gas station. It's not what I'm talking about. What lottery? What have you received in your life? What blessings that you didn't earn? I want you to think about it, and I want you to write these down. Because I started thinking about it this week as I was preparing the message. I was blessed, not with perfect parents, but with loving parents. I had no say over that. I won the lottery there in many respects. I was loved. I won the lottery with some athletic ability that allowed me to go to college and have my college paid for. I didn't do anything for that. That was given to me by God. I won the lottery when I met Cookie, and when she came into my life at the most important, critical time when I was at a crossroads in my life. That was God's mercy and God's grace. God came into my life and found me when I was at the lowest point in my life. That is, I won the lottery. I was given 3 wonderful children who have great spouses, and I didn't really have anything to do with that. I've gotten to pastor this church for the last 26 years. I won the lottery. Why me? And when I start to feel sorry for myself or become a little bit entitled in my thinking, or, well, why did that person get this and I didn't get that, or why don't I have what they have, and begin to go there, I go, wait a minute, God. Some call it the practice of gratitude. But I want to phrase it a little differently this week. As you do your assignment, in what areas you're thinking, well, my life is just a mess. Okay. Well, for starters, you're the sperm that won. Start there. If your kids are here, you can explain that to them. Maybe they'll learn anyway. Don't tell them you hatched out from under a rock or something like that. That'll mess them up. Start with that. You're alive. You're here. You exist. Jesus pursued you. How have you won the lottery? And start there. You see, I believe that we are all products of God's grace. Just by being, we are products of God's grace. And it's so important for us, followers of Jesus, to live our lives in view, full view of God's mercy. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do as you think about the lottery, then recreate the narrative of mercy in your life. Replace entitlement with mercy. And you'll be surprised, pleasantly surprised at just how much you have been blessed. Heavenly Father, we come today with joyful hearts in view of your mercy, not our circumstances, but in view of your mercy. Thank you for the mercy given to us because of Jesus' death and resurrection. And it's in his name that I pray. Amen. Have a great week and stay warm out there. Thanks for coming.